The recruitment office buzzed with the usual morning crowd when she walked in, designer heels clicking against the linoleum floor. Every conversation stopped, every head turned. She was stunning. The kind of beautiful that made hardened soldiers forget their next words.
Can I help you find something, miss?
The desk sergeant asked with a patronizing smile.
Are you here to visit someone?
She smiled back, pulled out a folder, and quietly placed her service record on his desk. 3 Purple Hearts, 15 combat deployments, 2 Bronze Stars. The room went dead silent. Staff Sergeant Mike Torres had seen it all in his 12 years behind the recruitment desk. Fresh-faced 18-year-olds trying to look tough, concerned parents asking about their children's safety, and the occasional girlfriend or wife stopping by to surprise their military partner. But when the blonde walked through the door at 0900 hours sharp, he was certain she fell into the latter category. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from knowing every eye in the room was on her. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail that caught the fluorescent lights, and her makeup was applied with the precision of someone who understood that first impressions mattered. The black blazer she wore was tailored perfectly, paired with dark jeans, and heels that clicked with purpose against the worn linoleum.
Ma'am,
Torres said, standing up instinctively. Around him, the usual morning chatter had died to whispers. Corporals pretended to shuffle paperwork while stealing glances. Even the grizzled master sergeant who ran the office looked up from his computer screen.
Good morning.
She replied, her voice carrying a warmth that matched her smile.
I was hoping someone could help me with a records request.
Torres nodded, already reaching for the civilian paperwork.
Of course. Are you looking for information about a family member? Spouse, maybe?
She tilted her head slightly, the smile never wavering.
Something like that.
Behind her, a young Marine recruit whispered to his buddy.
Dude, she's like a 10 out of 10.
His friend elbowed him quiet, but not before she heard. She didn't react, didn't turn around, just kept that same pleasant expression focused on Torres.
I'll need to see some identification.
Torres continued.
And we'll need to know whose records you're requesting. Fair warning, though. There are privacy laws we have to follow, so depending on your relationship to the service member, we might not be able to—
Here's my ID.
She interrupted gently, reaching into her purse. But instead of a driver's license, she pulled out a military ID card. Active duty. Torres blinked, looked at it more carefully. Captain Sarah Mitchell, United States Army.
Oh,
He said, his tone shifting slightly.
I'm sorry, Captain. I didn't realize you were—
It's fine.
She said, waving off his apology.
Happens all the time.
Torres studied the ID again. It looked legitimate, but something nagged at him.
She was too polished, too put together. Most officers he knew, especially the ones who'd been in long enough to make captain, had a different edge to them.
A weariness that came from years of service. This woman looked like she'd stepped out of a recruitment poster. What kind of records are you looking for, ma'am? He asked, handing back her ID.
Actually,
She said, reaching into her purse again.
I think there might be some confusion in my file. I wanted to make sure everything was up to date before my next assignment.
She pulled out a manila folder thick with documents and placed it on his desk.
Would you mind taking a look at this? I think there might be some discrepancies.
Torres opened the folder, expecting to see standard personnel files, maybe some awards paperwork that needed correcting. Instead, he found himself staring at a DD Form 214, the official discharge document that every service member received upon leaving the military. But this wasn't a discharge. This was a record of service for someone who was very much still active duty. And as Torres read through the citations, decorations, and deployment history, his expression changed from polite interest to complete shock. 3 Purple Hearts, Torres read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. The room had gone completely quiet now. Even the phone seemed to have stopped ringing. Captain Mitchell nodded.
The first one was Kandahar, 2018. IED blast took out our convoy. I was the only one who walked away from that one.
Torres kept reading. Bronze Star with Valor device, Afghanistan 2019, for actions during enemy contact when you pulled wounded soldiers from a burning vehicle under heavy fire.
That was a long day.
She said simply. Combat Action Badge, Airborne Wings, Ranger Tab. Torres looked up at her, then back at the paperwork.
Ma'am, this says you've done 15 combat deployments. 16 now.
She corrected.
Just got back from Syria last month.
Behind her, one of the young Marines spoke up.
No way, you're making this up.
Captain Mitchell turned around slowly, her expression still pleasant, but something harder flickering in her eyes.
Excuse me?
The Marine, barely 19 and clearly too young to know when to keep his mouth shut, stood up.
I mean, no offense, but you look like you should be on a magazine cover or something, not in a foxhole.
The room tensed. Torres felt the shift in atmosphere like a drop in barometric pressure before a storm. But Captain Mitchell just smiled.
You're right,
She said.
I was on a magazine cover once. Cosmopolitan, 2016. Beauty and Brains, America's Most Inspiring Women. It was a stupid article, but the photographer was talented.
The Marine blinked, clearly not expecting that response. The thing is, she continued, that photo was taken 3 weeks after I got back from my 8th deployment. I'd been in country for 9 months, lost 15 pounds and hadn't worn makeup in so long I'd forgotten how to apply eyeliner properly. But the magazine wanted to show that military women could be feminine and strong, so they spent 4 hours making me look like someone I barely recognized. She took a step closer to the Marine, and Torres noticed something he'd missed before. The way she moved. It wasn't the careful, practiced walk of someone trying to look good in heels. It was controlled, balanced, ready, like someone who'd spent years moving through hostile territory. The funny thing about combat, she said, her voice still conversational, is that it doesn't care what you look like. Bullets don't discriminate based on your bone structure. IEDs don't check your makeup before they explode. And when your brothers are bleeding out in the dirt, they don't care if you're pretty enough to be a real soldier. They just care if you're good enough to keep them alive. Master Sergeant Williams had been quiet through the entire exchange, but now he stood up from his desk in the corner. At 52, he was old enough to have seen 3 wars and wise enough to recognize something the younger soldiers missed. Captain, he said, that Bronze Star citation, Operation Enduring Freedom, 2019, you were with the 173rd Airborne. Yes, Master Sergeant, I know that operation, Williams said quietly. I was there. Different unit, but we all heard about what you did. They said someone went back into a burning MRAP 3 times to pull out casualties, saved 7 soldiers while taking fire from 3 different positions. Captain Mitchell's smile faltered slightly. It was just what needed to be done. They also said, Williams continued, that the soldier who did it got hit by shrapnel on the 3rd trip, took a piece of metal to the face that should have taken her eye out, but she finished the job anyway. The room was completely silent now. Even the young Marine who'd challenged her had gone pale. May I? Williams asked, gesturing toward her face. Captain Mitchell hesitated, then reached up and gently touched her left cheek. What everyone had assumed was expertly applied makeup shifted slightly, revealing a thin scar that ran from her ear to the corner of her mouth. Plastic surgery, she explained. 3 operations. The doctors did good work, but you can still see it if you know where to look. Torres found his voice. Ma'am, why didn't you say anything when I assumed? Because it happens every time, she said, settling back into her chair. I walk into a room and people see what they expect to see. A pretty face, expensive clothes, someone who's never had dirt under her fingernails or gun oil on her hands. And honestly, most of the time it's easier to let them think that. She opened her purse and pulled out a small compact mirror. Checking her reflection, you know what the hardest part about being a female soldier isn't? It's not the physical training. It's not the combat deployments. It's not even the IEDs or the firefights. What is it? Torres asked. It's that you have to be twice as good to get half the respect. And even then, someone's always going to question whether you really belong. She snapped the compact shut. So I learned to play the game. I learned to smile and nod when people underestimate me. I learned to let my record speak for itself. The young Marine, his name tag read Petty, was shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's fine, Marine.
Captain Mitchell said.
But let me ask you something. What do you think makes a real soldier?
Petty straightened up. Courage, dedication, willingness to fight for your country.
Good answer. Textbook answer.
She nodded approvingly.
What else?
Physical fitness, marksmanship, tactical knowledge?
Also good. What about experience?
Yes, ma'am. Combat experience. Captain Mitchell stood up and walked over to the wall where various recruiting posters hung. She stopped in front of one that showed a young soldier in full combat gear, looking determined and heroic.
This poster
She said,
shows exactly what people think a soldier should look like. Strong, serious, probably male, definitely not someone who spends time on their appearance.
She turned back to face the room.
But here's the thing about war. It's not a poster. It's not a movie. It's chaos and confusion and split-second decisions that determine whether people live or die.
She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos.
This is me in Afghanistan, 2019.
She held up the screen. The woman in the photo was barely recognizable, covered in dust and blood, her face streaked with exhaustion, her uniform torn and stained. But her eyes were alert, focused, alive.
This is me in Syria, 2023.
Another photo. This time she was helping load wounded civilians into a medical helicopter, her blonde hair dark with sweat and dirt, her hands steady despite the chaos around her.
And this
She said, showing one final photo.
is me at the Bronze Star ceremony, 3 months later.
The final photo showed Captain Mitchell in her dress uniform, standing at attention as a general pinned the medal to her chest. She looked exactly like she did now, polished, professional, beautiful.
Same person,
She said quietly.
same soldier, same warrior. The only difference is the setting.
Master Sergeant Williams cleared his throat. Captain, if you don't mind me asking, why are you here today? What's the real reason you needed to check your records? Captain Mitchell's expression grew serious. Because I'm up for promotion to major, and there's a review board next week that's going to look at my file and make the same assumptions everyone else makes. She sat back down, her professional composure slipping slightly. I've been passed over twice. Both times the feedback was the same. Questions about my leadership presence and whether I had the command bearing necessary for the next level. That's bullshit, Petty said, then immediately looked mortified. Sorry, ma'am, no, Marine, you're right. It is bullshit. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've led soldiers through some of the most dangerous operations in modern warfare. I've made decisions under fire that saved lives. I've earned every decoration in this file through blood and sacrifice. But because I don't look like their idea of a warrior, I'm still fighting for respect. Torres leaned forward. What can we do to help? Nothing, she said. That's the point. I have to do this myself. I have to walk into that boardroom next week and prove once again that I belong, that I'm not just a pretty face playing soldier. But you shouldn't have to, William said. No, I shouldn't. But this is the military, Master Sergeant. We play by the rules we're given, not the rules we wish we had. The office door opened, and Colonel James Harper walked in. He was a tall man in his 50s, with the kind of presence that immediately commanded attention. Everyone in the room stood up automatically. As you were, he said, then stopped when he saw Captain Mitchell. Sarah, what are you doing here? Hello, Colonel, she said, her demeanor shifting to something more formal. Just checking on some paperwork. Colonel Harper's eyes moved to the documents spread across Torres's desk. Mind if I take a look? Captain Mitchell hesitated, then nodded. Of course, sir. Harper picked up the service record and began reading. His eyebrows rose slightly as he scanned the list of decorations and deployments. Jesus, Sarah, I knew you were good, but this is... Impressive? She suggested. Intimidating, he corrected. I've been in the Army for 28 years, and I don't have half the combat experience you do. The room was watching this exchange with fascination. Here was a senior officer treating Captain Mitchell with the kind of respect that her record deserved, not the patronizing attitude she'd been receiving all morning. Sir, she said carefully, can I ask you something? If you saw me walking down the street in civilian clothes, what would you think? Harper considered the question seriously. Honestly, I'd probably think you were a model or an actress, someone who'd never had a hard day in their life. And if you didn't know my record and you saw me in uniform, he was quiet for a long moment. I'd probably wonder how you got your commission, whether you'd earned it or— Thank you for being honest. But that would make me an idiot, Harper continued, because anyone who's actually worked with you knows exactly what you're capable of. The problem isn't your appearance, Sarah. The problem is that too many people in this military still think they can judge a soldier's worth by looking at them. Harper turned to address the room. Gentlemen, let me tell you about Captain Mitchell. 2 years ago, I was a lieutenant colonel commanding a forward operating base in Syria. We had intelligence about a high-value target, a terrorist leader who was coordinating attacks against our forces. The mission was volunteers only, because the chances of coming back alive were about 50-50. He paused, looking around the room to make sure he had everyone's attention. Captain Mitchell was the first to volunteer. Not because she was reckless, but because she'd studied the target area better than anyone else. She knew the terrain, she knew the enemy patterns, and she knew how to get our people in and out safely. Captain Mitchell was looking uncomfortable with the attention, but Harper continued. The mission was a success. We captured the target, recovered valuable intelligence, and all our people came home. But what you don't see in the official reports is what happened when we took contact on the way out. An IED disabled our lead vehicle, and we were taking fire from 3 directions. He looked directly at Captain Mitchell. Sarah was in the second vehicle. She had 2 choices: stay with her unit and fight from cover, or run across 50 meters of open ground under fire to help the wounded soldiers in the lead vehicle. What did she do? Torres asked. She ran, Harper said simply. Through gunfire, through smoke, through chaos. She reached the disabled vehicle, pulled out 3 wounded soldiers, and got them. She looked up at him. No, you don't. You reacted to what you saw. That's human nature. But I was wrong. And I said things that were disrespectful. You said things that I've heard 1,000 times before, she corrected. The difference is that today, someone spoke up for me. Someone who actually knows what I've done, Harper nodded. Which brings me to why I'm here. Sarah, I have news about your promotion board. Her expression tightened. Bad news? The opposite. The board was moved up. It's this afternoon. And I'm the senior member. Captain Mitchell blinked. This afternoon? 1,400 hours. And after reviewing your file, your complete file, I can tell you that the board won't be focusing on your command presence or your appearance. They'll be looking at your record of service, your leadership under fire, and your potential for future assignments. Sir, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just show up at 1,400 and be yourself, the real you, the soldier you've always been. After Colonel Harper left, the office remained quiet for several minutes. Finally, Torres spoke up. Captain, I owe you an apology too. When you walked in here, I made assumptions. I treated you like a civilian, she finished. It's okay, Sergeant. Really, no. It's not okay. I'm supposed to be a professional. I'm supposed to recognize a fellow soldier when I see one. Captain Mitchell gathered her paperwork and stood up. Can I tell you something, all of you? They nodded. The hardest part about being underestimated isn't the frustration. It's not even the anger. It's the temptation to prove yourself in ways that don't matter. To get louder, to get tougher, to try to become someone else's idea of what a soldier should be. She smoothed down her blazer. I spent my first few years in the Army, trying to be more like the men around me. I cut my hair short. I stopped wearing makeup. I tried to make myself smaller and less noticeable. I thought if I could just blend in, I'd be accepted. What changed? Williams asked. I realized that I wasn't serving my country to blend in. I was serving to stand out, to be the best soldier I could be, not the best imitation of someone else. She picked up her purse and headed toward the door. The military is changing, Slowly, but it's changing. And it's changing because people like me, people who don't fit the traditional mold, keep showing up and proving that we belong. Ma'am, Petty called out as she reached the door. Good luck with your promotion board. She turned back and smiled. The same warm, genuine smile she'd... After Captain Mitchell left, the office remained unusually quiet. The normal chatter and phone calls resumed, but there was a different energy in the room. Torres found himself looking at each person who walked through the door with new eyes, wondering what assumptions he was making, what stories he was missing. Around noon, Williams approached his desk. "Sergeant, you got a minute?" "Sure, Master Sergeant. What's up?" "I've been thinking about what happened this morning. About Captain Mitchell." Torres nodded. "Hell of a thing." "Yeah, it was, but it got me thinking about something else. How many other soldiers have we misjudged? How many have walked through that door and been treated like they didn't belong?" It was a sobering thought. Torres had always prided himself on being fair, on treating everyone with respect. But this morning had shown him that good intentions weren't enough, that sometimes respect had to be earned through understanding, not just given through politeness. "What do you think we should do about it?" he asked. Williams was quiet for a moment. "I think we need to remember that every person who walks through that door has a story, and we need to listen to that story before we decide what we think we know about them." At 1500 hours, Torres's phone rang. It was Colonel Harper. "Sergeant, I wanted to let you know that Captain Mitchell's promotion board went very well. She'll be Major Mitchell by the end of the week." "That's great news, sir. She deserves it." "She does. And I wanted to thank you and your team for how you handled things this morning. It meant a lot to her." After Torres hung up, he looked around the office. Petty was helping an elderly veteran with his benefits paperwork, taking extra time to explain each form. Williams was speaking with a young woman in civilian clothes, listening carefully to her questions about joining the military. Maybe they were all learning something. 3 months later, Major Sarah Mitchell walked back into the recruitment office. This time, she was in her dress uniform, her new rank insignia gleaming on her shoulders, her ribbons and decorations displayed in perfect order. The office went quiet again, but this time it wasn't from shock, it was from respect. In the military and in life. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "Oh, and Sergeant Torres, that young woman who was here yesterday asking about officer training, the one who seemed nervous about whether she was military material?" "Yes, ma'am." "She reminded me of someone I used to know, someone who had to learn that being different doesn't mean being less than. Make sure she knows that, will you?" "Absolutely, ma'am." Major Mitchell walked out into the afternoon sun, her heels clicking on the linoleum one last time. But this time, everyone in the office knew exactly what they were hearing, the sound of a warrior walking proud. Welcome to Quite Tales Studio. Before we begin this story of assumption, courage, and hidden strength, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. Because at Quite Tales Studio, we believe that the most powerful stories don't shout, they stand tall and let their actions speak for themselves. Have you ever met someone who shattered your assumptions? Someone who showed you that strength comes in many forms? Share their story in the comments below. And remember, at The Human Stories, we believe that every person has a story worth telling, and every story has the power to change how we see the world.